These are the most frequently asked homework problems from Algebra 2, Section 1-5, Day 2. And we're going to be looking at the problem starting with number 25. And number 25 says the lengths of the sides of a triangle are in a ratio of 5 to 6 to 7. Describe the length of the longest side if the perimeter is less than 54 centimeters. So for 25, you have to remember that a ratio of 5 to 6 to 7 means that there was some number that was in all of these that you can factor out. And we don't know what that number was. So basically you need to think of this as it was a fraction that had like 5x to 6x and 6x to 7x. And when they went ahead and reduced those, they got a ratio of 5 to 6 and 6 to 7, and then they just put those two ratios together, which would make sense. So we've got 5x, 6x, and 7x, and those would be what we would use to stand for, and definitely not drawing a scale here, to stand for the sides. And then what we know is that the perimeter is less than 54. Well, perimeter is what you get when you add all of the sides up. And that was just less than 54. And then we would go ahead and do the math on that. So it was probably just a setting up on this one if you struggled with it. But 5 plus 6 is 11, plus 7 is 18. X is less than 54. And then just go ahead and divide both sides by 18. We are not dividing by negative, so we don't have to do any flipping. And we will get X is less than 3. And then it asked, what's going on with the biggest of all of these? Well, the biggest of these would have been the 7x. That definitely would be the longest side here. So what we want to do is we want to say, well, what do I do to that to get 7x so I can look at that? Well, I'd have to multiply both sides by 7. So that's exactly what we do. So what we see here is that longest side would have to be less than 21. Less than 21 units, whatever that is. Then the next one that is commonly asked for on this group of problems is number 27. Number 27 says the cost of a field trip is $220 plus $7 per student. If the school can spend at most $500, how many students can go on the trip? I'm going to try and fit that over here. All right, so we've got the cost of the field trip, and we know that at most it can be $500. Now, we all know we're talking about a school here, so this has to be less than or equal to 500. That's what we mean when we say at most. And then it's $220 plus, you can put 7x for the students. I really would not encourage you to use 7s, for students. And then we'd go ahead and solve that. So we'd subtract 220 from both sides. Trying to use my finger right here so that it's not making all those big clanging noises like it has been in the past. And then divide by 7. And that's talking about the students. So at most, 40 students could go on this trip. And that again is because we know that $500 is the cutoff. So there's number 27. Next one on the list that people tend to ask about is number 44. Number 44 says the diagram shows the scores that a speed skater had in their trials, and we want to know what's the maximum time on the last trial so that she has an average time. Now that's the big deal right there. Average. Average is what you get when you add everything up and divide by how many you have. So in this case, we'd take 35.52, and we would add 36.04, and we would add 35.87, but then there's going to be one more trial, and we don't know what that one will be. And we're going to have to divide that by 4, because you have the 3 that you already know and 1 that you have to find out. And then it says we want this to be under 36 seconds, so that's going to have to be less than 36. And then again, probably at this point you don't need any much more, but that'll be 107.43 plus x over 4, and that will be less than 36. And then we would go ahead and multiply both sides by 4. And we have 107.43 plus x is less than 144. And then we go ahead and subtract 107.43 from both sides. And x needs to be less than 36.57, and this was in seconds. So 36.57, less than 36.57 seconds. Next one on the list here for most frequently asked for would be number 47. And I think that's just because people aren't as comfortable with fractions as they maybe should be. So with 47, I would say most of you like to distribute. So 2/3 x minus 8, 2/3 of 12. With fractions, you do top times top, bottom times bottom. So think of that as a 1. You could always do some cross-reducing there. The 12 with the 3 would give you 4. And 4 times 2 would give you 8. So 2/3 x minus 8 is less than or equal to x plus 8. Well, I'd go ahead and subtract the 2/3 x from both sides. Negative 8 is less than or equal to 1/3 x plus 8. Then subtract 8 from both sides. Keep it in mind, we don't have to flip the sign as long as we do not multiply or divide by a negative. And then to get rid of that 1/3, we're going to multiply both sides by 3. And that will be a negative 48. And again, we never did any multiplying or dividing by a negative, so x will be greater than or equal to 48. Again, you can flip the whole thing. So x will be greater than or equal to negative 48. And I think you had to graph this one as well, but if you had trouble, it was the solving. So I'm not going to do the graph for you there. You guys are capable of doing that. Then the next one is problem number 51. These word problems generally give people some trouble. So 51 you probably could do now that I've done the speed skater one, but if you want to double check, you've got a 68, a 78, a 90, and a 91, and you want to know what's the score on your next test, the lowest score you can earn on the next test to achieve an average. So there we go again. This time we'd have to divide by 5 of at least 85, so greater than or equal to 85. And you, of course, just combine your like terms on the top there, add all your constants together. 327 plus x over 5 is greater than or equal to 85. And then you multiply both sides by 5, because the 5s are going to cancel out right here. And we'll have 327 plus x is greater than or equal to 85 times 5 is 425. Subtract 327. And we have x greater than or equal to 98. So you'd have to score at least a 98 on your next test in order for that to happen. Then number 52 is one where people just get a little confused, but it's saying that the pH level has to be between 6.0 and 6.5. So here's my pH, and it has to be between 6.0 and 6.5. That's a compound inequality, an and statement there. And then they did want you to graph it, so you could just make a quick number line, maybe by using 0.5s at a time. Because this was in decimals, we probably want to stick with that as we're making our number line here. And then it did say inclusive, which means those count. So we're definitely going to put closed dots at 6 and 6.5, and everything in between is a go. All right? And then finally, number 53. Going back to geometry, the sum of the lengths of any two sides of a triangle is greater than the length of the third side. And we've got a triangle here that we have to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and make a drawing here, because that's what you need to do, especially, I hope you learned that in geometry. If you don't know what you're doing, then make a drawing. So there's triangle ABC, and this is 8 minus AB. And this side down here is 4. And they're using 8 minus AB. I don't know what AB is, so I'm going to make that an X. And what that does is it changes things up over here because now I can call that 8 minus x. And like we said, any side has to be greater than the sum of the other two sides. So x has to be greater than 8 minus x plus 4, because this side has to be greater than this side and this side added together. So x has to be greater than 8 plus 4 is 12 minus x. You'd add an x to both sides and then divide by 2. And again, at no time did I have to do any multiplying or dividing by negative. So I know x has to be greater than 6. Now I go back up here and I put this 6 in for x, and that's going to give me a 2. So that tells me the smallest that this could be is 2. So x has to be between 2 and 6. And that would be the easiest way to write what's going on with that right there. So x would be between 2 and 6. That should take care of your questions on 1-5 day 2.